We are continuing in Mark chapter 14. In this chapter, we've already looked at verses 1 and 2, and that with the chief priests and the scribes, they are plotting how they can take him by trickery and put him to death. And they have already decided that they cannot do it during the feast because there will be an uproar. We have the Passover that is on its way, so they cannot do it during then. And we also have in this chapter, going from verses 3 to 9, we discussed this, it's been 2 weeks now, but 3 to 9, with Jesus being anointed with the costly oil of spikenard. And we discussed how costly that was. It was extremely costly. And that there were some who criticized this. And it says, verse 4, but there were some who were indignant among themselves and said, why was this fragrant oil wasted? For it might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they criticized her sharply. Now, we don't know who all the they were, but we do know Judas was involved in this. We'll get to that in just a little bit. That would be in John chapter 12. It's saying that Judas was part of this, but it does say they, and it does say some. So that would indicate that there was more than just Judas who was involved in this. But Judas is the one that we will see clearly in John chapter 12, who he's not concerned about the poor. He is a manipulator. And I can't answer for the rest of them of who the they may have been. But it is clear from John chapter 12 that he cared nothing for the poor at all. He just wanted the money, that 300 denarii, or could be sold for more than that, because he stole from the money box. He kept it and he stole from it. Now, Jesus rebukes all of that and saying that she has done what she could, and also saying that she has anointed me for my death. That they know, because he's told them what's going to happen. He's told them what's going to happen. And they may not know the exact when, and they may not know, they certainly don't know everything, but he has told them that he is going to die, and it's going to have to be at the hands of the high priests, and that can only be done in Jerusalem. Well, that's where they are. They've gone to Jerusalem. Jesus had leading the way in that. But now we go to verse 10. So in Mark chapter 14, verse 10, then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray him to them. Betray Christ to them. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. So they sought how he might, so he saw how he might conveniently betray him. He knows he can do it. It's a simple thing. He knows. Unlike the high priests or the scribes or even the Pharisees or others, Judas knows where Jesus is. Judas knows where Jesus goes at night with his apostles. He knows where to find him. It wouldn't take a lot for him to know what Jesus is going to be doing. And so this is an easy job for him. It's an easy 30 pieces of silver for him. But before we go any further in this, I want us to just look at some things. Of course, that Judas has already gone to make a deal with the chief priests. He's already done that. But let's go to Psalm 41:9. Psalm 41 and verse 9. And there is a prophecy concerning what Judas is going to do. Even in Psalm 41 verse 9, even my own familiar friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me. Okay, This is a prophecy concerning Judas. Jesus, it's as though Jesus is expressing this, that my own familiar friend whom I trusted. Now, there's some things that need to be said concerning Judas and Jesus. Were they friends? Yes, they were, because it says right here they were. And Jesus knows who he has chosen. He knows exactly who he's chosen. And he knows exactly who's going to betray him. He knows that. And yet, he calls Judas his friend. And we need to understand that while Jesus knows everything concerning what Judas will do, Jesus never gives him less than anybody else. Same opportunities, same salvation, same apostleship. He's not like a second tier apostle or a second class apostle. He's a full-fledged apostle. Either you are one or you're not one. All right? And Judas has been given miracles, because Judas, just like the other apostles, he has all the rights and the privileges that anyone who follows Christ has. Even though Jesus knows what Judas is going to do, Jesus shows him the same amount of love and the same amount of grace and the same amount of mercy and friendship, everything toward Judas. But here in Psalm 41, we have verse 9. Here is just one of the places concerning what Judas would do. Now, it doesn't say exactly who he is by name. It just says, my own familiar friend, in whom I trusted. All right, that he would lift his heel against me. Now, let's just ask the question, why betray Christ? Why do it? All right, what is there that Judas would want in this? One, we have to answer these questions as best we can. If we're going to ask the question, we need to answer as best we can. And we can't go into some sort of psychoanalysis or things that we have any kind of speculation, but there are things that we can know. Let's go to John chapter 12, and we can see that Judas has some serious problems, and he's not dealing with those problems. John chapter 12, and we'll just begin in verse 5. This goes with the costly oil of spikenard being poured onto Jesus. And of course, we've already read that in Mark. This is John's account. But actually, let's just begin in verse 2. So John chapter 12, verse 2. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound. Now, Lazarus has been raised from the dead. Lazarus was dead. They had a funeral for him. He's been in a tomb. Jesus came and resurrected him, and now they're having supper, and Lazarus is there with them. Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, "Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" This sounds like he's concerned that this is bad stewardship, that this is a grand waste, and this could have gone to help someone. Then he said, this, verse 6, now we need to see this. This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. But Jesus said, let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not have always. All right? Jesus doesn't throw any accusations out. He doesn't say, Judas, you are a thief. Judas, you are a manipulator. Judas, you are as self-righteous as they get, saying something like this. He doesn't do it. He just says, leave her alone. And she's doing this for the day of my burial, because that's coming up fast. And Judas, let's just look concerning Judas. Verse 6, this he said, not that he cared for the poor. Well, first off, we see he's a thief. He had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. He's a thief. This is something he has been doing. 300 denarii, or perhaps more than 300 denarii, would be more money that he could take for himself. And we see that there is greed that is in him. There is greed. 30 pieces of silver may not be, I couldn't tell you, but may not be as much as 300 denarii. I don't know. But 30 pieces of silver, he would betray Christ for that. That was enough. He was a greedy sort. But he's also someone who he really is hateful. He really is. Because he is a manipulator. He is acting all righteous. He's a manipulator in this, in saying, trying to shame people into something so that he can take advantage of the situation. Trying to shame someone into doing something else. Now, when he says it, it's too late. He's just saying as, alas, this should have been done. And this is to shame someone like Mary. But what was he going to do with it? He was going to take advantage of the situation, and the money would be put into the money box, and then he would have access to it. And also, he has no concern for the poor at all. There's no love in him. There's no love there. He's not saying this because he was concerned for anybody but himself in supplying his own greed. And it is the love of money that is the root of all kinds of evil. And he evidently has that love for money, and he's a thief. And this needs to be stated, that if Judas had corrected the problem that he had, and I guess we could make that plural, in the problems that he had, being a thief being top of that list, I do believe. If he had corrected his behavior, if he corrected this, Satan would have had a much harder time tempting him and manipulating him. Judas thinks that he manipulates others, and he does, but he himself is also being manipulated because he's made a home for Satan. He's made a home for sin, and because of that, he doesn't have the strength he would need to be able to say no. Someone who's not greedy, someone who's not a thief, would not have been so easy to convince, at least in this way, for 30 pieces of silver, to betray the Christ. Maybe they could be convinced by some other means, some other price or something else, fear or tempted in some other way. But here Judas has made himself very, very weak in this. Now let's go to Zechariah chapter 11. Zechariah 11, and we just want to read some things. We're going to take a little bit of time on this one because I think we need to. That the book of Zechariah has some interesting things in the way it's wording. In its wording, it has some interesting things. And for those who would have been in Zechariah's day, there's no way they could know what this meant. There's no way. And it's not for them in Zechariah's day to have been able to figure it out because they couldn't have figured it out. They could not have figured out what we're about to read. It begins in verse 12. Zechariah 11, verse 12. They couldn't have figured it out. And today we can figure it out. We can know very quickly what it means. We can know quite quickly because we have the New Testament. Now, for those who disregard the New Testament, who consider it to be just the working of men, someone who's going to take the Old Testament and say, yeah, this is God's, and the New Testament and Jesus of Nazareth, all that is just idolatry. That is nothing. Well, this continues to be a mystery. To them, it is a mystery because they've tossed away the key. This is a locked door. New Testament brings keys to the locked doors of the Old Testament. But verse 12, then I said to them, so is this Zechariah speaking? No. Actually, in Zechariah's day, they couldn't have known if it was Zechariah. In the days prior to Christ being on the earth, no one could know if this was Zechariah saying this or someone else. Very much like the Ethiopian eunuch, Acts chapter 8, he's reading Isaiah, and he asks, is the writer saying this about himself, or is this some other man? He doesn't know. Is Isaiah saying this about himself? And with this, is Zechariah saying this, or is someone else saying this? Well, it's someone else. It's not Isaiah. It's not Zechariah. Then I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out for my wages 30 pieces of silver. Okay, now already we can see, this has a correlation. But we continue on, verse 13. And the Lord said to me, here is quotes, the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter. Now, I'm reading from the New King James, and the New King James ends the quote from the Lord there. But I think that's wrong. I think, and literally it says, and Jehovah said to me, all right, throw it to the potter, because I think the quotation marks need to continue on. That princely price they set on me. Because it's Jehovah that is saying that. Because I said to them, if it's agreeable to you, give me my wages. Wages are not a princely price set on me. Wages are things that you have earned. A price set on me is a bounty. That is the price on your head, as opposed to wages of something, some work or some service you have done and you're paid for that service. There's a difference between those two. Because in verse 12, it clearly is wages. This is a service that is being done, a work that is being done. Whoever this I is, and we know that it's Judas. But it's Jehovah who said, throw it, said to me. That would be literally God telling Judas, throw it to the potter. That princely price they set on me. Now, that would be the end of our quotes. So I took the 30 pieces of silver, and we know that God didn't do that. We know that Jesus didn't do the next part at all. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. In the days of Zechariah, and following that all the way until we get to the Acts of Judas in his betrayal, there is no way anyone could know what that meant except God. Nobody. It's a locked door because it makes no sense until you know how it was fulfilled. It makes no sense. Why would, what are the wages for? 30 pieces of silver. What are the wages? Zechariah doesn't tell you. Doesn't tell you at all. Why would Jehovah tell you to go give it to the potter? Zechariah doesn't tell you why. Why would you ever go to the temple to pay the potter? It doesn't tell you that either. It doesn't make any sense. And I do have, if this is a locked door, once you have the key, it makes absolute sense. You know what occurred. And this is one of those things where one of thousands of things, this has one author through and through, because Zechariah is going to be writing this in the days of the rebuilding of the temple, in the days of Nahum and Ezra and Nahum. He is a prophet during that period of time. Then we're going to have 400 some odd years of intertestamental period where there's silence. Then, of course, we have John the Baptist, and then Jesus in his ministry. It's a long time. It's going to be well over 400 years before this comes to pass. And it all happens completely, like cogs, the teeth of cogs that fit perfectly together. Or, as we might say, hand and glove, or two pieces of a puzzle that just come right together and finish a picture. This book obviously has one author, using numerous prophets, over some 40. It's just estimation, because we don't know who wrote certain books. But approximately 40 writers, but there's only 40 prophets who physically write it down, but only one author, and it is God, specifically the Holy Spirit, that inspires the writers. Now, this is telling us well in advance, over 400 years in advance, what is going to happen, and here it is, hidden in plain sight. Read over and over, who knows how many times through all those years, and no one could know what it meant. And it isn't until after it occurs, someone goes back to Zechariah chapter 11, here it is. Look at what we've been reading all these years, and it came to pass. And it came to pass in the betrayal, that Judas, his betrayal against Christ. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 26. Matthew 26, because we want to look at similar passages concerning Judas, and Matthew chapter 26, and beginning in verse 14, because this Matthew is going to give us something that Mark didn't give us, but what we're about to read in verse 14, Mark does give us this. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you?" And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. So from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. Now, in Mark, we see where he goes to make a deal, but we don't know entirely what they're going to pay him. But notice, what are you willing to give me if I deliver him up to you? Zechariah 11:12, if it's agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. That sounds like someone who is bargaining of, what are you willing to give me? And if the price is right, yeah. If the price isn't right, no, I'm not going to do it. But 30 pieces of silver, yeah, that works. That works. And how incredibly shocking it would have been if Judas had remembered in all of this Zechariah 11:12 and 13. That suddenly, or that of Psalm 41:9. I don't know that he did, but how incredibly shocking to have discovered the meaning of Psalm 41:9, Zechariah 11:12 and 13 apply to him. Apply to him. Or let's just say, we, you, and I, just for a second say that we are Judas Iscariot, that somehow we realize this applies to me. This is me. How did this ever happen? And God knew it was going to happen. Now, he says Matthew writing that he goes to the chief priests. He says, okay, what are you willing to give me? 30 pieces of silver. All right. So he goes to seek opportunity how he would betray him. Now that's verses 14 to 16. Judas has made the arrangement. He has made the deal. 30 pieces of silver, and he's got to betray the Christ. 30 pieces of silver. He's made a deal with the chief priests. Now, let's go to verse 20. Verse 20, still continuing in Matthew 26, verse 20. When evening had come, he sat down with the 12. Understand, what occurred in verses 14 to 16 has already happened. By the time we get to verse 20, those things have occurred. Judas has made the deal. Judas knows he is looking for the opportunity. When evening had come, he sat down with the 12. That's Jesus sat down with the 12. Verse 21. Now as they were eating, he said, assuredly I say to you, one of you will betray me. Now, we have all 12 of them are going to ask, is it I? Am I the one? And that includes Judas. And it really gives me chills when I read those words from Judas. All right, but let's continue on. I say to you, one of you will betray me. So here is a clue. Here's a clue that's been given, because he's already said he's going to be betrayed. He's already said it. Now, and they may wonder, who is it? Because a betrayal, I think we mentioned this last week, no, 2 weeks ago, I can't remember. Pontius Pilate could not betray Christ. Herod could not betray Christ. The Pharisees could not betray Christ. Why? Why couldn't they? Because they're already his enemies. All right? Your enemy cannot betray you. Your enemy can kill you, but it's not a betrayal, because you already knew that's my enemy and they'll kill me. A betrayal is where someone close is in fact your enemy and you don't know it. Someone close, or someone who close who has been your friend, suddenly, for whatever motive, decides, yeah, I'm going to help your enemy now. That's a betrayal. So they can know from those words that he's going to be betrayed, it's going to be someone close. That it couldn't be a Roman authority, it couldn't be the Sanhedrin court, because they've already proved that they've proved vividly they are his enemy. So it's got to be a disciple, at least. It's got to be a disciple. And I suppose one could say it could have been one of his brothers. One could have thought that it's one of his brothers, because his brothers don't really believe, but they're close to him. They're not his enemy per se. They don't want him dead. But one could think, well, it may be one of his brothers. But he is saying, one of you will betray me. And there they are in the room. One of you will betray me. So it's like the guilty party is sitting among us. Who is it? And it is interesting that they want to know, their first concern is it me? Okay, the first concern is going to be that. But he's going to give them more clues in this, and they'll never get it until it occurs. They'll never get it. They just don't. So we continue on, verse 22, and they were exceedingly sorrowful, and each of them began to say to him, Lord, is it I? Which I find that they're learning something. They have learned something in this when they say, Lord, is it I? They've learned that it's possible that any one of them could do this, including himself. Any one of them could do it. And they are exceedingly sorrowful. And here they are doing this self-examination also wondering, potentially I could do it. And that what I mean by they have learned something is they have seen things occur, fulfillment of prophecies, fulfillment of things, and they're going to see more things occur, such as Jesus telling Peter, "You're going to deny me." And Peter saying, "I would never deny you." Well, you're going to, but you're also going to return. Right? Things that they would find absolutely against their current will, against their current direction. They have discovered that they could do something in the near future that they would never have thought they would have done. Yet they did. Yet they failed. They did something. And here, I think they have in fact learned something to know that, each one, including me, if I were there, including me, could be the betrayer in this. Verse 23, he answered and said, "He who dips his hand with me in the dish will betray me." So here is another clue. He who dips his hand with me in the dish will betray me. Now there's a number of them there, and of course there's a lot of things going on. They are emotionally struck that it's one of them who's going to do it. They're emotionally struck, and it just from my standpoint, I mean, I'm not trying to be humorous, but my first reaction is, if I were there, my hands go to my side. I'm not putting my hands back up there. I'm not going to do it. My hands go to my side. And I mean, that's just me. Because he says, the one who dips his hand with me in the dish will betray me. I'm not going to allow that to happen, because I don't want it to be me. I'm not that is just a sign of who it's going to be. That's not who that's not who it's determined it will be. The one who does this, it's then determined that's going to be the betrayer. But that they don't pay attention enough to realize what's happening right in front of them. And of course, they are extremely distressed. They are exceedingly sorrowful. So they are going to miss some things. And it could also be missing things of what he just said, such as, he who dips his hand with me in the dish will betray me. The Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born. Judas is right in that room hearing those words, and yet will do precisely what he's going to do. Now, when I say that Jesus gives as much love and friendship and concern to Judas as to anybody else, he doesn't keep it hidden from Judas. He tells Judas is right there. Now, for anyone else in there, that message is not for them per se. That message is not for them. It's not a warning to them all of, make sure you're not the betrayer. Jesus knows who the betrayer is. And the others don't. But he's saying it would have been good for that man if he had never been born. It had been good if he never even existed, because of what he's about to do. Now, that should just knock the plans right out of Judas's head. It should have knocked it right out. And if he had, any agreement he may have had, he's not going to do it now. And he doesn't even have to go back to the chief priests to say he just doesn't have to do it. Just never mind. I'm not going to do this at all. Now, we come to this. Then Judas, who was betraying him, he's in the process, who was betraying him. He's already made a deal, and he just heard what Jesus said. Judas, who was betraying him, answered and said, "Rabbi, is it I?" That is cold. that is incredibly cold. When I made mention earlier that Judas had greed and he also had a hatred. There was not much love in there. He wasn't concerned for the poor. He was concerned for himself. But he says, "Is it I?" Judas knows it's him. And it is, in looking at this, the others don't know. And he may think that Jesus knows, or Jesus doesn't know. And it could be that he thinks Jesus doesn't know it's him. It could be. But he says, "Rabbi, is it I?" Just like the rest of them, "Rabbi, is it I?" He said to him, "You have said it." Now the others didn't hear that, or they didn't pay attention to it, because he just answered Judas. With the others saying, "Lord, is it I?" Verse 22, he doesn't point and say, "Yeah, it's you." But Judas here in this room, see, there are things going on that the others just miss, and they just missed it. All right? They are, as we said, they are under a great amount of sorrow, exceedingly sorrowful in this, and they're about to go through something they'd prefer not to happen, but it's got to happen. They're about to go through something that's going to happen, and it is hitting at the heart there of the Christ. The Messiah is going to die, and he's going to die because one of them betrayed him. And potentially, it could be me. Potentially, it could be me who does this, and they're missing things. But it is cold-hearted. "Rabbi, is it I?" It's almost like testing Christ, or a wink, almost like it could be, of where, "Yeah, you know it's me. You know it's me." But it could be either way. That Judas thinks that he has fooled everybody, including the Christ. But he hasn't fooled the Christ at all. But notice, we have things being said in this passage, going from 20 to 25. "One of you is going to betray me." That means one of his disciples, one of his apostles. "One of you is going to betray me. He who dips his hand with me in the dish will betray me. And you have said it." He answers Judas directly. So they've been given clues right there. Now, we'll go back to Mark. Let me see if we need to go back to Mark. Let's go back to Mark chapter 14. Mark 14. And as we have seen in verses 10 and 11, Judas has gone to the chief priests. He's made his deal with them. And we come to verse 12. "Now on the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover lamb, his disciples said to him," all right, "where do you want us to go and prepare that you may eat the Passover?" And he's going to tell them what they have to do. And I do believe, now understand, 2 weeks ago we did this, or we didn't do this, but I taught this class twice on that day, and I don't know where I ended up on either one. But I'm going to read this just in case we didn't do it here. Now we may have, but I cannot remember. But in verse 13, he tells two of his disciples what they need to do to prepare for the Passover. And this is very similar to when he tells the two disciples to go, and they're going to go into the city. They're going to find the colt or foal of a donkey that is tethered. Untether the colt, and if somebody, or when somebody asks you what you're doing, you tell them the Lord has need of it, and they'll send you on your way, which is precisely what they do. All right? Now, it's very similar. Verse 13, and he sent out 2 of his disciples and said to them, go into the city, and a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him. So, easy enough. Go into the city, and you're going to find a man with a pitcher of water. And he's going to meet you. You're going to follow him. Wherever he goes in, say to the master of the house, the teacher says, where is the guest room in which I may eat the Passover with my disciples? That's what you're to ask the master of the house. Then he will show you a large upper room, furnished and prepared. There make ready for us. Now, this is such a certainty. Christ doesn't need them coming back and saying, we've got the room. He says, yeah, you make ready for us, because it's there. It's the room is there, so you make ready for everything, and we'll be coming in time. So his disciples went out and came, verse 16, and came into the city and found it just as he had said to them, and they prepared the Passover. In the evening he came with the 12. Now as they sat and ate, Jesus said, assuredly I say to you, here is this first clue that he's giving them. Assuredly I say to you, one of you who eats with me will betray me. So that's basically saying that it could be any one of them, because they're all eating with him. They're all eating with him. And this also goes to Psalm 41:9 of my friend whom I trusted, my familiar friend whom I trusted, who ate my bread. All right, that anyone, but it reduces it. It reduces it down to them, one of you, and they're all eating together. And he tells them that it's one of you will betray me. And they began to be sorrowful. Verse 19, and to say to him one by one, is it I? And another said, is it I? That would be Judas. He answered and said to them, it is one of the 12 who dips with me in the dish. So that's, it's one of the apostles. One of the apostles there who dips with him in the dish. And this is like just my first, and of course I'm doing this hindsight fully, but I can just imagine if I were there that I'm now putting my hands by my side. I'm through. I'm through for right now. I am not going to do that. And but like I said, that's not a determination that one will or will not do it. It's just a sign of who would do it. And did Judas know what he was doing when he dipped with Jesus in the dish? I don't know. But he's going right with what Jesus said was going to happen. The Son of Man indeed goes, verse 21, the Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had never been born. Okay. Judas, as we have said, Judas heard that. He's in the room, and he just heard the warning. And how many other places other examples could we show where someone has been given a warning by God? If you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, you're not coming back alive. If you do this, this is there's going to be punishment, and this is what the punishment is going to be. And yet they did it anyway. They just decided on their own that they're going to completely and utterly disregard the warning. And Jesus gives him a warning, so it cannot be said that Judas somehow was not given some kind of warning that what he was about to do would have horrible consequences for him. He is given the warning, and he is told precisely how bad this is. Precisely how bad it is. And now we have run out of time, but we'll continue on. We're going to look at Luke and John and the things that occur there, because I think it's important. We haven't done this to too many things in the book of Mark, of where we have, only a few, where we have looked at other accounts. But I think it's important in some things that we look at other accounts and kind of get more of a full picture of what is occurring. It helps us in understanding the event itself, and someone like Judas and others who are there with Christ. And we will continue next week, and thank you, everybody.